bringing visitor flow rate. So more people will be coming into Kenya, into Westlands, and into GTC as well. Now, the three major things that make GTC what it is. First is the GTC Cloud Club. Now, what AVIC Development is trying to do is we are trying to bring investors in Nairobi and connect investors to the entrepreneurs of Kenya. Now, what it brings is the gathering of information. GTC, first of all, will have a GTC Cloud Club, which is an entrepreneurship club. We have perfect security, about 7 facilities of security or measures of security. We will also have a strong business ecosystem. Now, if you go through Wayaki Way, all you see is a building. But please do enter and see what we are offering. We are offering opulence, we are offering excellence, and we are raising the bar of real estate in Kenya. Now, GTC is not a governmental, well, it's a governmental institution, but it brings back this private institution and also the Kenyan government together with the Chinese government, and it modifies and brings such a connect where we urbanize Nairobi as a whole. Now, since I had about 5 minutes, so I want you to all come to GTC and see the type of excellence we are bringing in Kenya. And this proves that the diaspora can also invest in Kenya. Because in real estate, yes, we've had the negative stories, but there is excellence, there is opulence, there is quality in the Kenyan market. And where you can find this quality is at the Global Trade Center. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chief Guest, we treasure our partners. They enable us both from public and private sector. So many must have been asking, who is GTC? You now know a bit, but she will still be telling us more with her GM, Mr. Wang. We'll probably be hearing more as we progress with the event. My turn. I do realize our chief guest is pressed for time, so instead of my 10 minutes, I'll try and make them 8, if he permits. One, we are living in a handshake era. Many will be surprised that diaspora, in a way, precipitated the handshake. And for those of us who are here to the end, you will be seeing the memorable pictures for the first time. How some of this happened. Some of it as late as 7th March, chief guest, which was just 2 days to the handshake. So some of the diaspora leaders were already aware some of this was happening in the background. But of course, it was the effort of many people, including some of our chief guests on this right table. Can we give them a round of applause for bringing us that handshake? The next issue is, how do we convert the handshake into an opportunity for diaspora? So obviously, how do we get the Kenya we want? That's one of the things we'll be talking about during the next 3 days. We're glad that this is our 5th in a row of every year we have had the event, and it keeps getting better. We believe next year will even be much better. By the time we are leaving here, we'll have agreed on a date. It seems the week just before Christmas is becoming popular, but of course, the members participating will decide at the end of it. In 2014, when we had the first convention at Daystar University, when SG, you were with us there, we did commit that in the next 5 years, we want to double. We want to see remittances double. Then it was $1 billion per year, 100 billion Kenya shillings. I'm glad that it has surpassed, 5 years on, it has surpassed that target. It is now $2.68 billion. Give Diaspora a round of applause for doing that. Again, we don't want to claim credit, but we are one of the sojourners who have worked with the government and private sector, government at the two levels, to realize that target. We are committing again, and if it's agreed, it's going to be a resolution at this conference that in the next, every 5 and 10 years, we want to see this figure double. We should be talking about $5 billion every year, going by what Filipinos are doing, and we'll see the mathematics. So I'm hoping we are all going to commit, whether from public or private sector, to double in every 5 to 10 years. I'm glad that, Chief Guest, diaspora remittances already supersede all our top agricultural exports combined. So it's more than you take tea, which gives us $1.2 billion per year. You add horticulture, gives us $800 million per year. And you add coffee, which gives us $200 million. That comes to about 2.2 or $2.4 billion per year. Diaspora is 2.6. Give Diaspora again another round of applause. Even if you look at it another way, the two topmost exports of Kenya, it's tea and tourism. One brings 1.2 billion, the other 1 billion. It's still 2.2 billion. So Diaspora still, whichever method you want to, matrix you use, Diaspora is still a gold mine. It's not asking too much for Diaspora to be considered for an own ministry or an own department. I'm glad that tomorrow we'll be hosting former Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Amina. This is a conversation we have had before with a light touch and will continue to have. When it was first mentioned, it sounded really out of this world. But some countries now, I know of at least 5 countries which already have a full ministry. Separate from Foreign Affairs, there's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. India being one, Nigeria another, Georgia another, and so on and so forth. Even Ethiopia and Rwanda, they have directorates, which are like departments headed by a PS. So we know it's difficult to create a new ministry, but maybe we could consider renaming foreign to be foreign and diaspora affairs. And I'm glad that Ambassador Mutiso actually heads at the Jubilee Secretariat. He heads foreign affairs and diaspora. Give him another round of applause. So that, if that's something to give a thinking, maybe something food for thought. We also will be requesting in future we think of a diaspora week, and probably the week just before Christmas. The whole week, perhaps, would be a good time to consider. But again, these are requests. Maybe our senior leaders will help us table to government who are sharing with Ambassador Bishar that maybe they can reach places where some of us are a bit too short to reach. So hopefully some of these messages get across. One of the major highlights as I approach my end, a major discussion is going to be, there's been a lot of talk about starting a diaspora bank. On our KDA platform, WhatsApp, those who are there on the DICL platform know, over the past 1 week, it has dominated the conversations. But there's a suggestion that maybe we start with a CIS, a collective investment scheme. So we are hoping that a resolution will come to get diaspora's buy-in. And remember, as we are talking here, you are also tweeting. So there are diasporas who are following their thousands across the globe. Finally, mine is just to compliment, first, God. At one point, we thought this wasn't going to happen. That God made it happen is almost like a miracle. Second, I must thank our special chief guest. The moment you have a venue and you have a chief guest, you know you have an event. So give Dr. a round of applause. And he didn't give us qualms. I must also thank, we only have 2 Kenyans who had UN agencies. I normally say, Ambassador Dr. Jambo, who spoke earlier on, at one time was the senior most Kenyan woman in the UN system. Give a round of applause, having been Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat. The 2 only Kenyans who had the UN, who had UN agencies, specialized agencies, are today with us here. You know, these guys are head of state level. So you may treat them like watu wadogo, but sio watu wadogo. Give them a round of applause. Ambassador Bishar, we don't take you for granted. I said if you have a venue, you have an event. And it's the next person I'm going to call. I'll talk about the other colleagues so that we save on time. But this gentleman said, no, you must hold these things. Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, EBS. Give him a round of applause as CEO of Kenya Film Classification Board. We would not have been here had it not been for him. Another round of applause as he comes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shem. Our chief guest, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, convention organizers, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen. On my own behalf and on behalf of the Kenya Film Classification Board, let me express our sincere gratitude and pride for the opportunity to be part of this year's Kenyan Diaspora Homecoming Convention. As Shema said, we are humbled to have had the opportunity to facilitate the venue and also transport that is picking participants from town and taking them back in the evening. So your stay here for the next 3 days is fully catered for by the Kenya Film Classification Board. If you take any water or some food, please take it with gratitude to God and to Kenya Film Classification Board and the government of Kenya. Kenya Film Classification Board is a state agency charged with the important role of regulating film and broadcast content to achieve two major things. One, to promote our culture, moral values, and national aspirations. And second, and most importantly, to protect children from premature exposure to adult content. Research has shown that media content has power to influence people negatively or positively. Vulnerable groups like children can be influenced negatively by unpalatable media content. Vices such as violence, radicalization, drug trafficking, pedophilia, bullying have been promoted through unrated film content in many parts of the world, including here in Kenya. Yet film and media, at the same time, are generally major catalysts for positive social change. Content regulation, therefore, is an integral part of our national development narrative. Indeed, films do not just promote business, they also promote ideology. Someone said, filmmakers don't just want your money, they want your mind as well. The film industry can become a major catalyst, not only for economic change, but for shaping our moral values and ensuring that as a nation we progress in a way that helps us to become orderly, to become morally upright, to respect the rule of law, to uphold the values of family, the fear of God, respect for instituted authority. These things are important, and they do matter. The speaker I found speaking, I think it was Mr. Rotich, when we got in with our chief guest. Mr. Rotich gave an overview of the great strides that Kenya has made, particularly under the Jubilee government and the previous administration of former President Mwai Kibaki, which our chief guest served in as a Minister for Trade and Industry and did an excellent job. Yes, appreciate it. We have done very well in building the physical infrastructure, in building schools, hospitals, standard gauge railway, roads. We have lifted the levels of ICT growth. Kenya is the only country, I think, in Africa, our chief guest, that has fully migrated from analog to digital. Our internet growth and penetration, including mobile telephony, is out of this world. We are doing very well in the physical infrastructure. The challenge is the moral infrastructure, is the character of our people, is inculcating values that would make our society be more cohesive and easy to govern. I call it the software of the nation. And there's no country ever in the world that developed without first sorting out the moral issue. You look at countries like Singapore, Malaysia, North Korea, and others that have progressed, and we are at the same power. We are at the same point at independence. The first thing that they did was to sort out the issues of morality, to build a moral foundation for their country. If you look at countries like America, Hollywood has contributed significantly in defining the ideology of the American people, promoting the American ideology, but also branding the country and creating jobs. The same is true of Bollywood, and closer to home, Nollywood of Nigeria, which is now one of the top contributors of Nigeria's GDP alongside oil and agriculture. Niger films, or Afro cinema as we call them here, are now a major pillar of promoting the culture of Nigeria and branding that country. In fact, somebody said, if you blindfold someone and you drop them in Lagos, in a short time they will tell you they're in Nigeria because of the way people talk, the way people are dressed, the way they embrace their culture. It's not the same with us here. If it were to open the other way around and they drop someone at Jomo Kenyatta, Ambassador Mwenja, you know, you'll be confused which country you are in. Nigeria has done very well in rebranding, using soft power of film to rebrand, to tell their stories, to embrace their culture. And as a result, now, even Kenyans are making money imitating Nigerians. There's a guy called Dr. Ofwenike, who is a lawyer, but listening to the guy, you think he's a pure Nigerian. He talks like an Oga. And he has branded himself that way. And we laugh and enjoy comedy from Nigeria. They are achieving two major things. One, they are selling their culture, but they are making money. Recently, Nigeria entered into a major deal with Netflix. And with the availability of technology right now and online distribution of content, this is the way to go. Kenya can use films to contribute significantly to the Big Four agenda by creating job opportunities for unemployed youth. Talent-based institutions are the frontier for job creations and wealth globally. This is the reason why Kenya Film Classification Board desires to partner with institutions like KDA to identify opportunities for investment in the film sector. And we urge you to consider in the deliberations for these next 3 days to discuss the opportunities available in film. We invited some of the major filmmakers are here. The CEO for Machaud, which is the leading county in terms of Victor Muniavu, is over there, and the other filmmakers here, and you can discuss the availability of opportunities for you to invest. Kenya prides in having some of the best filming locations in the world. Our flora and fauna, as well as our cultural diversity, is an untapped resource. And the wild-beast migration has been billed as one of the 8 wonders of the world. The magnificent sceneries coupled with the creativity of our youth and exponential growth of technology makes Kenya an ideal, preferred filming destination. We therefore invite the diaspora. We have a program that we are calling Cinema Mashinani, rolling out films and creating a culture of cinema going that will not only promote our culture, but we interest our people in our stories. We must not allow our stories to be told from the lens of the Western media anymore. We need to begin to tell our stories. Our narrative has for far too long, as Africans, been defined as a continent of wars, civil strife, poverty, hunger, disease, and so on. Yet there's so much going on in our country in terms of development. But I do know my colleagues in the media, those of us who went to school during my time, were taught that when a dog bites a man, it's not news. But when a man bites a dog, it's big time news. And I want to plead with the filmmakers and all of us to collaborate in changing the narrative of our country. We must be careful what we reflect outside there through the media and through films. Films must speak about the dominant values of the people and their culture. And this is what we are doing as KFCB through content regulation. We are happy to partner with the diaspora. We thank Dr. Shemo Ochodo for choosing us as a major partner for this convention. And we promise our greatest support in availing the opportunities available, guiding you to invest and make film business a viable investment venture. Thank you. May God bless you. Enjoy the deliberations.
Wow. Thank you so much, my brother. He gives me encouragement even when you feel a little bit low. He says, no, it's doable. Give him another round of applause. He didn't say, we do not only just have shuttles, Bwana SG. The shuttles are branded KDHC. Give a round of applause. But also, leading our social media. Actually, and with that regard, I want to just request the team just to stand up. The planning committee, the secretariat, just stand up. I'll not call everybody by name. Just stand up, Madam Chair. Everybody, Charity, all those on social media, on the planning committee, thank you. So can just wave on their behalves. Now, this is the team that made this possible. Thank you so much. We don't take you for granted. At this point, I want to invite the lady in our midst. We are very sensitive about gender. In every session at the front, you will, Madam Mojambo always says, no, you must have the ladies. Now, this particular lady, some of us call her the mother of the blue economy. Formerly CEO of Kenya Maritime Authority as a state corporation, but now the PS. I want just to say, SG, recently, of course, we know what happened in Kenya with the big conference. She was in the background, together with Madam Mujamba. I remember a while back, heads of states attending a Commonwealth meeting, kept pushing things. Your Excellency, Kenya is not engaged in this space. I'm glad these two women have brought us this far. Give them a round of applause. Madam Mama Blue Economy, it's your chance. Nancy Karigithu, PS, Maritime and Shipping Affairs. Another round of applause as she comes.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Shem Ochuotha. Yes, I see you are sensitive to ladies, but we're only is it 10 or 1% there? But it's okay. We are getting there. Yes. Our chief guest for this morning, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, Secretary General, UNCTAD, organizers of this great event led by the Kenya Diaspora Association Chairman, Dr. Shem Ochuotha, distinguished participants, guests, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to attend and be part of this great event, and more so, to be given an opportunity to touch on something very close to my heart, the blue economy. My pet subject. I have learned that this is the 5th annual Diaspora Homecoming Convention, and kudos to the Kenya Diaspora Association and the Diaspora Investment Club, which in liaison with your recognized partners have made this event happen. For a group whose annual remittance into the country has grown to over 250 billion, I can only say that your decision to provide a platform for conversation around investment opportunities in Kenya is quite commendable. I see great opportunities in these forums, and I have been informed that you anticipate working with both public and private partners in order to double diaspora remittances to 500 billion shillings by the year 2022. That is an ambitious target. And from a government perspective, I want to say that we take this very, very seriously. And we look at this as diaspora capital to help us develop this nation. And I'm privileged to be part of relaying that message. So I want to extend a very warm welcome to fellow speakers, distinguished guests, delegates, brothers and sisters from the diaspora. Karibuni nyumbani. We've learned recently that geologists in their study of minerals, of rocks, and distinctive fossil plants found in South America, Africa, India, and other parts of the world have confirmed that our planet was once a landmass of all the different continents of the earth joined together, and most important, that the source of humanity is not only in Africa, but somewhere in Kenya. So I therefore welcome the diaspora back to the source of civilization and humanity, Kenya. Let me take further opportunity to acknowledge the sterling work of the diaspora. When I was invited to this forum, I pondered over possible areas of the blue economy that the diaspora could come in, and 3 areas immediately came up to my mind. First of all, your remittances have always supported relatives and friends, but are now going beyond consumption, and it's high time that they went to trade, investment, and capital formation. How then can the diaspora contribute to the growth of the blue economy? Second, there is great opportunity for leveraging diaspora network for exchange and transfer of knowledge, skills, and innovations that can be harnessed in developing the economy at home. Skills and expertise acquired in ocean oil fields overseas, for example, can be invested in ensuring blue economy back home is sustainably developed. What knowledge, therefore, what skills and innovations can the diaspora bring into the development of the blue economy? And I leave that answer to you. And thirdly, as diaspora, you live out there, and you have great opportunity in promoting advocacy in support of the blue economy development for our country. So we see in this that different groups can advocate and mobilize resources on behalf of development of waterways, catchment areas, waste treatment, and marine life, among many others. However, taken together, these efforts do indeed form a lobby for the blue economy, and they become the voice of the blue economy out there. Can we rely on you as diaspora to be instrumental in spearheading similar advocacy efforts for sustainable blue economy development? Again, I know you can. Now, let me be nostalgic and recall that 3 years ago, we convened the inaugural National Maritime Conference, which was presided by none other but His Excellency, the President, Uhuru Kenyatta, at the KICC. That venue, or rather that conference at that time, was addressed by both local and international distinguished speakers. And it was gratifying to note that during the recent Sustainable Blue Economy Conference, just a few days ago, we witnessed the whole world now come back and successfully deliberate for 3 whole days on the same issues, but on a much wider and global scale at the KICC yet again. By all standards, we have very good reasons to be proud as a country, and I wish to congratulate the diaspora for very successfully grabbing the opportunity to organize your own side events. Apologies, I didn't attend because we had over 60 side events, and the most frequent complaint I got was that there was so much to do but such little time. However, the comments I got from those who attended your event, as well as the social media, showed that it was indeed an eye-opener to all of you. And I must end up by reiterating that, what you may have heard at the conference. But please listen to this very, very carefully. During the inaugural 2015 National Maritime Conference, we had a dream, a big dream, that still burns just as bright 3 years later. And that dream comprises of seeing people liberated, our people, Kenyans, liberated from all forms of sea blindness, from the humiliation and degradation, which, though not shown directly, often pulsates in global conversations on the use of oceans, rivers, lakes, and water bodies. Everybody acknowledges and says Africa has a lot of wealth in its waters, but yet we use so little of it. But we know this must stop, and it has to stop. But it will only stop when we begin to chart our own path into earning respect, earning dignity out of our intense and research-oriented sustainable engagement with our oceans, rivers, lakes, and other water bodies, even dams. We've had times people complaining around dams, but we want to change that mindset and see what assets it is in them. The maritime sector that we have just enumerated is an unexplored goldmine of investment possibilities. It's a sleeping giant upon which the transformation of Kenya, of Africa, can turn into a first world space. And I'm going to give you just a few spaces where this can happen, but let's reflect on something. Some of our Asian friends, countries, at some point were just like us, and we've heard the story of Singapore and others. But we have seen them today exporting tilapia to Kisumu. catching fish in our waters, either illegally by way of IUU or upon payment of what I would call a very small amount of annual license that can be recouped in only one expedition from less than a quarter of a single scoop of fish on one expedition. They are also engaged in our blue economy activities in our waters that are still out of reach for us. So we need to take our rightful place in managing our affairs so we can stop being spectators from ashore, but being participants in that space. At the just ended conference, someone called it wealth blindness. And isn't it true? Because we are spectators in an arena of maritime transportation in a country where 90% of international trade comes in ships. All ships are foreign-owned, whose services we pay for in US dollars, meaning it's leaching from our foreign exchange reserves. And this we have done just a very reserved, we have a very, reservation of 300 billion annual remittances to foreign suppliers. Is this a space we can occupy? Why not? Because it is 50 billion over and above what US Diaspora sent us last year. The other thing to note is that our Indian Ocean waters are rich in fish. And we are told by various studies, including one done by the Commonwealth Secretariat not so long ago, that it is an area with 90 billion shillings worth of fish, which is a migratory species. And if we don't catch it in our waters, it goes and it's caught somewhere else. We only manage a paltry 21 billion of fish reserves, of which 3/4 of it comes from our inland waters, meaning the more expensive, more pricey commodity in our oceans disappears. Yet we have hundreds of thousands of highly educated, unemployed, but also some underemployed young people who can be absorbed in this sector, but even more so, who can be absorbed as another kind of diaspora in the maritime space. I could go on and on with similar challenges in other clusters, but today I resolved to be a merchant of hope. And solutions in these forums are not a peddler of problems and challenges, no matter how true they may be. I strongly believe that how we see our destiny is a more vital and rewarding quest than bemoaning our past failures. How can we do this then? Can I propose just 3 issues that we may look at? First of all, that we must by all means chart our way out of dependency and underdevelopment, and most important, take control of our resources for the benefit of our people. Number 2, that after this convention and following the just concluded maritime conference, we must begin to write a new chapter in our story. And a chapter that says Kenya, working with its diaspora, is moving fast to explore opportunities in this rich blue economy. And lastly, that the rising new Kenya will lead the continent in the eradication of Afro-pessimism and prejudice, and to that end will start showing its achievement in the next few years in showcasing realization of objectives of what is our blueprint as a continent in maritime development, African Integrated Maritime Strategy. I wish I could make all of you think like this, if I do nothing else. For us as a country, this is a battle for survival, and we must fight together as a country. And we are honored that in this we are led by none other than the President. We've seen various initiatives happening, and we have witnessed, for example, the launch of the Coast Guard, revival of the fisheries sector ongoing, shipping line, and I invite you to be part of it. If we must change the narrative, we invite you, all of us, to work together, the diaspora, the maritime, the public, the private sector in this country, to move forward. Thank you so much. God bless you. I wish you a blessed convention. Thank you. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Madam Mama Blue Economy. You know, one of our children, and when Madam Pierre speaks, and when I see you here was reminding me, you know, I can't speak after my boss. When the PS is there, hiyo ni serikali inaongea. Another round of applause. One of her children is Kenya Maritime Authority. Bwana John Omingo, just wave. You've been a very good friend of Diaspora, all the way from Mombasa. Thank you. You know, the blue economy is going to be one of the tracks. So this is Ini Kionjo too. And I was delighted. I think I saw one of those who would qualify as father of film in this country, Bwana Litondo. Give Bwana Litondo just wave. Give him a round of applause. So you see, creative industry inaenda sawa sawa when you see wazee wa kazi here. Madam Mheshimiwa PS, even though you were saying the ladies are marginalized, actually we had sufficient vote of ladies. Next, I'm inviting the person who holds the heart of no lesser than Secretary General of COMESA. And you know, COMESA previously was held by Ambassador Excellency Mwencha at the extreme hand. But the one who now holds it is Honorable Miss Shileshe Kapwebwe, Secretary General of COMESA, who has sent no lesser than her deputy, Ambassador Dr. Cheluget Kipyegon. Give a round of applause. So we were very gender sensitive.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shem, our chief guest, the PS, Mr. Mwencha, Ambassador, and Mr. Mutua. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jambo. I'm Jambo Tena. I'm telling you, I'm very happy to be here. I left Kenya when I was 18, and I'm still really thankful for this country for all the things that I've been able to do, because I've been an ambassador of this country. I've been given a chance to be a lecturer at the university, and currently I'm the Assistant Secretary General for Programs at the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa. And so definitely, before I go any further, I'm supposed to deliver a speech on behalf of the Secretary General of COMESA, but I will just say a few words. I won't take a lot of your time. First of all is, because of that academic background, I'm very pleased to inform you that just about 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, we launched a book called Kenya's 50 Years of Diplomatic Engagement, from Kenyatta to Kenyatta, edited by myself, but in here, all the prominent Kenyans who have written, except of course I wish Ambassador Mwencha had also written, but if you were to read, there's Ambassador Kiplagat, Ambassador Afande, all these great people. So the history of our diplomacy since independence, well, is told in this book. So, and one of the leading publishers in Nairobi is called Moran Publishers. They will be here shortly, and you can be able to get a copy of this book. I'm pleased that I had two former vice presidents, Honorable Mudi Awori and also Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, as well as the CS for Education, Ambassador Amina Mohammed, to launch the book about Abiko Soego. Now, coming back to COMESA, so let me also start from the academic part. You can also Google, by the way, the book is also available on Amazon since you are .com. But you can also Google an article that we wrote jointly with another professor just a year ago. It is called COMESA and the Tripartite Free Trade Area Towards an African Economic Community. It's published by the South African Journal of International Affairs. So Google that one also, read about COMESA, and also read about the good work which was done by Mr. Mwenja and his team. Now, coming back to COMESA, let me not even go to the notes because of the time. Madam Gileshe was elected recently as the Secretary General. Is the first woman Secretary General of COMESA. But I was also elected for the second time as the Deputy Secretary General for another term of 5 years. So I'm part of the team that Mr. Mwenja left in COMESA. And let me tell you this. Mr. Mwenja is a very humble person, but the kind of work that he has done for Africa is amazing. That's why I cannot even say much about COMESA, because he is COMESA. He's the one who really put in the pillars of integration. Now COMESA has 21 member countries, 21. So as I speak, I'm an Assistant Secretary General of an organization with 21 member countries that stretch from our newest member is Tunisia. You'll be amazed that also Libya is a member, Sudan, and all the way to Eswatini. For those of you who don't know Eswatini, it was called Swaziland. So all along all this area, this is our region that I can tell you, I can go anywhere within these 21 countries and feel welcome as a member of staff of COMESA. And so what is the idea of COMESA? It is regional integration to bring us together, open the borders, and Mr. Mwenja and his team put in instruments to enable this to happen. You'll be amazed. Many people don't know that there are very viable COMESA instruments. In Nairobi alone, we have 3 or 4 institutions that belong to COMESA that make trade possible. We have the COMESA Monetary Institute, based right in the School of Monetary Studies in there. We have the African Trade Insurance Company, somewhere in Upper Hill. We have SEPRI, and there are other instruments such as the yellow card. As you cross the borders, you'll see something called the yellow card insurance. All these are instruments created for integration of our continent. And what we also did, of course, we have a treaty that enables us to work within this region, and it is well negotiated in all areas of integration, economic integration. This is also to make the border posts easier. We have created what we call the one-stop border posts. And COMESA also works with international partners. It works closely with the East African community and also SADC in what is now known as the tripartite free trade area. So if you want to know more about the tripartite free trade area, just read my article. Just Google there and read that article about the tripartite and what the tripartite is trying to achieve. Now, this is also in support of what we call the Africa free trade area, the Continental Free Trade Area, or the CFTA, that is now being formed. So, essentially then, what my predecessor there did was not only become the Secretary General of COMESA for 10 years, but he went ahead and became the deputy chairperson of the African Union for another 10 years. So he made sure that all those ideas that he had in his heart burning are in place. And today, Africa is the way it is. And I think this is really the essence of the Kenyan economic diplomacy that we see. And to cap it all, the former Minister of Trade and Industry, Mr. Mukisa Kitui, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, has even gone further and be at the international level to work with UNCTAD to also position Kenya in a global context in terms of economic diplomacy. So Shem, I think I want to stop there because I'm very conscious of time. I don't want to keep my seniors waiting. And I thank you very much for inviting me. And COMESA, for the young people who are here, I would like to encourage you to just be ambitious like I was. When I was 18, I left the country, went out there, came back, worked for Kenya in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, go further, worked for COMESA. I also worked for IGAD, the East African Community. So the opportunities are there. My son is also here. I think he's been traveling all over the world, but all in the name of our beautiful country called Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. You know, I always say there are very few better examples of Kenyan senior ambassadors than Ambassador Daktari here. Many of the ambassadors will tell you that. Give him another round of applause. Asante sana. I don't want to be between you and tea. We really apologize. We are a little past our time. I'll just recognize Jason Mochache, just wave, architect, retired. I think he stayed emeritus from Africa Development Bank for many years. We are glad. I know there are many people in the house. We can't recognize all. This is the last time I'm talking because once I hand over, the shoes are too big for me, for the two heads of the UN agencies. Let me just say a word about first. Ambassador Bishar did tell us, as head of UPU, once he was in Barbados or Bermuda. I hope he will tell that story. It was a shocking story to me, but he's a special man. We have missed him the three past events. This time he said he was coming. But before I call him, because when he's done, he'll be the one to call his brother and colleague. I feel so proud that Kenyans are also heading UN agencies. You know, I was talking to some UN heads here, but I know, you know, we're also talking to your bosses. This doctor here did me very proud as Minister for Trade. There are times you would talk, you know, in a conference. You say, that's my man. Give Ambassador Bishar a round of applause. And then you call your brother to open the event.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Dr. Shem Ochodo, distinguished chairman and guest of honor, my big brother, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, distinguished speakers, Mr. Abdulghadir Duro and other organizers, representative of governments, members of the diaspora, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Bishar Abdul Rahman Hussein. I go by many titles. They call me the Al-Haji. Sometimes they call me Ambassador Bishar. And now they call me the Director General of the Universal Postal Union. So simply call me Bishar. I thank the organizers of this diaspora event, which brings together all of us to celebrate this very important community called the Kenyan diaspora. Your Excellencies, let me say one thing. Actually, I am bored when I read written speech, so I may want to speak from my heart. When God created man and this earth, He chose Africa and called it Africa. And He has endowed Africa with all the resources that we are all aware of. And He created people called Africans and made us the envy of the whole world. Why do I say this? And history bears this. I don't believe in the theory of evolution because I'm a Muslim. We know that God created man and this universe, but our archaeologists and history has told us that the cradle of mankind started in Africa before people moved to the rest of the world. So please, we are not here by accident, we are here by design. So let us give ourselves a big round of applause. And we should not be taken for granted anywhere on this planet. When you have all these resources and you are endowed by God, you become the envy of every nation on this planet. I'll give you a bit of history. And all of you are students of history. I start with the Phoenicians and the Greeks and the Romans, and later on Arabs, and the Spartans, and I don't know, the Hammurabians, and I don't know how many of them. Every civilization that lived across the Mediterranean came and invaded Africa and looted its resources. That is history. It's not me saying. And they set empires along the North African coast. And soon to follow, our Arab cousins were not left behind. They found it was also time for them to get access to Africa. They came and set up their kingdoms in the East Africa coast, all the way to Mozambique. I'm told that the Chinese and the Indians and the Asiatic people were trading, and I'll put it in trading. Probably they were pirates who came to East Africa coast thousands of, I think millenniums before even Jesus Christ was born. And we had a large continent, green, rich with wildlife, fauna, and flora. Then in the 16th to 19th century, our European cousins came across and they said, no, they want to pick these guys up. And history has taught us that they carried us in ships and enslaved us in the sugar plantations in the Caribbean and in West Indies. And I think you know that history very well. I travel a lot, and when I went to the Caribbean countries, the scars of what I call discrimination, the scars of underdevelopment of the Africans is still visible to this very day. You go to Haiti, you go to St. Kitts and Nevis, you go to some small islands, you find that the level of underdevelopment and the deprivation is appalling. Your Excellencies, they didn't stop only on the slave raids. In the 19th century, they came back here and established themselves as colonizers, and we know they parceled us into small groups, dividing people and societies, and locked us in different countries, and gave us different languages, different ideologies, and different structures, different currencies, to the extent now that my big brother, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, is trying to bring together all these guys to speak to each other. We have difficulty in transacting with each other. We have difficulties in currencies. We have difficulties in language. We have difficulties in doing business together. And this is a reality. Now, fast forward, after all that history of where we're being envied and everybody comes here and get a piece of Africa, what happened is that we struggled very hard to gain our independence. And after we gain our independence, 50 years on, we find ourselves in another dilemma to find very pathetic pictures and videos and pictures that come on our screens to see thousands of our young men and women going across the Mediterranean on dingy boats and trying to cross, screaming and kicking and crying to reach Europe. To do what? These people are fleeing insecurity, they are fleeing lack of opportunity, they are fleeing desperation, they are fleeing what we call poverty and hunger and deprivation. Now, the $1 million question for us is, if we blamed Europe for all our woes as a student of political science, and if you are one good student, you must have read the theories of underdevelopment. And we always, our lecturers in the 80s used to teach us that every problem of Africa is we pin it on the door of Europe because they come to cause us neocolonialism and everything else. 50 years after independence, how can we continue blaming other people for our challenges? This is something for every child that dies in that Indian Ocean, or every girl that's abused in a foreign country, or every diaspora person who is humiliated out there, is an indictment on our leadership, on ourselves. And I think this is something which our governments must be able to take head on and address these challenges. Your Excellency, having said that, I believe the diaspora people are not strangers. These are our brothers, these are our sisters, these are our cousins, these are our aunts, and our loved ones who left our country because they could not find opportunities here in this country, paid their own money, risked their lives, sometimes through difficult journeys across Sudan and some of them through Libya, and the harrowing stories you hear in the hands of those traffickers. And some of them found themselves in distant lands and foreign lands, which they have domiciled there. Today we are celebrating we've been told here that the revenues that they generate and remit to this country surpasses the entire resources or revenues we get from all our major exports combined. What does that mean? What effort did the government put to take these people there in the first place? We invite our, what do you call, investors, donors, you call them development partners. We go kneeling down to these guys to ask for support. We give them all kind of concessions. We give them all kind of access. We give them all kind of, we receive them at the airports with VIPs and everything else. Yet, we have this constituency of our brothers and sisters, Kenyans, who go out there, sweat through their brows and knuckles, and send their remittances here, and no one pays attention to these people when they come here. For me, I think there's something wrong in this conversation. And this has to be addressed, and I believe this is the forum to be able to express it. I don't want to blame anybody. Probably the opportunity has not come. Probably we have not seized it. But I do believe that something can be done, and I'm sure our president and the government is going to address this. Your Excellencies, I have traveled a little. I want to be short, I promise you. I tell this story to Dr. Chodo, but I want to share it with you. I was going on an official visit to what is called Caribbean Postal Union Conference in Bermuda. Bermuda is a small, tiny island, 5 kilometers by 5 kilometers off the coast of the United States of America. Now, I landed there in the middle of the night. I don't know how the pilots found the place. I was fearing the Bermuda Triangle will go down with me. It was a very shaky flight. And when we finally landed, I said, Alhamdulillah, praise be to God, that my feet was on the ground. Now, before I landed there, there was a request I got. I was told that the organizers told me, when you finish your business, there is a Kenyan diaspora people who would like to meet with you. So they asked me to stay one more day. And I did that. When I found a group of people there, probably about 200 or thereabout. And they had one colorful evening they held on my behalf. They hosted with the Kenyan flag and the beautiful drapes of Maasais and Thank you very much. I asked them, when I hear of Bermuda and I saw how far it was away from Kenya, what conjured in my mind is that this guy must have been stowaways. So I was wondering how they ended up and which ship carried them and how they landed in Bermuda in the first place. So I asked them how they got into the place. And what really shocked me is that these are not ordinary Kenyans. These are not the boys and the girls who go and clean hotels and rooms and everything else. These are doctors, these are engineers, these are accountants, these are nurses, these are professionals who have been selected on a fair competition globally. And because Bermuda is a haven, what's called an offshore haven for rich and the wealthy guys from Britain and all over the world, these are the men and the women who manage those resources and those facilities. And I could not have seen a better class of professionals, elite, intelligent people than that crowd of people I found in the place. So please give them a big round of applause. That day I was so proud of myself as a Kenyan, and I said I have to take this message back to our government that the best of our brains are out there, and we need to be able to recognize them. So I do believe that the diaspora, everywhere we have in Kenya and other places, are also men and women of integrity and quality who just did not have the opportunity to get jobs in our country and who have gone to seek out. Your Excellency, one thing I want to remove this myth that being a diaspora or out there has always carried some connotations that you are either a failure in your country or something has happened. Or this is a myth. United States of America is a country of diaspora people who have all fled from Europe and other places. Pirates, thieves, people who could not have opportunity in their own countries, some who were persecuted, all landed in those places. Australia is made of what? Huh? So who are the boss of South Africa? Where do they come from? So I don't want to mention names, but I want to tell you that the whole world is migrating. So there's no crime for Kenyans to move out or Africans to move out. So please, again, by the way, let me just add one thing here. We have reverse diaspora migration. They come in different forms, in different shapes. They're called consultants, professionals, and they come, they're swarming around our capitals here, all just to come and look for opportunities in our own country here. So, first of all, there's no crime being out in the country, in other countries. As an ambassador of Kenya, I was in United Arab Emirates, and I had more than, at the time, about 20 to 30,000 Kenyan diaspora working in United Arab Emirates and the neighboring countries. So I have first-hand experience in dealing with them, in their challenges, in their opportunities, and what they really require out of government. And my embassy, I was trying to do everything possible to organize them, to sit with them, to stand with them when they are arrested, to follow them up, with their visas and renewal of their passports and many things. So when I'm talking about diaspora, please know that I have dealt with them on first-hand basis. Secondly, I spent 20 years of my life, the last 20 years, outside the country myself. So I'm a bona fide member of the diaspora community without anybody asking me to be one. So when I speak, when you are out there and you leave behind your loved ones and you are losing your grassroots opportunities that you could get in the country here, when you are working also in a foreign country, me and Ambassador, and my colleague here, Dr. Mukisa, we are diaspora because we don't have the opportunities those our colleagues who in the country have here, who get the plum jobs here and everything else here. We are sweating out there in the cold and eating some funny food that we are not even able to digest in our stomachs. Your Excellencies, I can tell you this, there are a lot of challenges when you are a diaspora member, so please, I know it all. Finally, let me say a few things here. I attended a conference in, every time this subject is discussed, really my blood pressure goes up of the diaspora. There was one conference which is held in Uganda where I was invited to attend. And one young guy from the diaspora just came there and showed us a video of what they go through when they go through the hands of some Sudanese and Libyan, traffickers. And they told us harrowing stories how they get into the place. And from there, actually, we lost our appetite. All the guys who were sitting there, we could not be able to discuss this subject any further. So I just made my short speech and walked away from there. Your colleagues, my colleagues, what I wanted to tell you is this, that I want to, whenever we meet in this kind of forums, that we have to have some tangible results out of this kind of forums. For me, when we meet, I don't want this kind of forums to be places where we meet all acquaintances, shake hands, exchange cards, eat samosas, have a feel-good type of things. and then we leave this place without really concrete, what do we do next from here? So to me, that is what I am trying to suggest. I've been thinking since I've been told to become to be a speaker, to see what practical solutions can I bring on the table to suggest to these people here. And I have just a few suggestions. Some of them have already been echoed, but please, I have a 5-point which I want to end up with this. I'll just point them one by one, and then I'll sit down. First, I will recommend that the Kenya government considers the creation of a dedicated ministry to handle the diaspora issues. I think this one was said. Okay. Hello? Hello? Well, okay. The technology is not working, so I'll just keep it down. The ministry can then develop policies, programs, and strategies to engage with and support the diaspora community issues. Your Excellencies, I have been in United Arab Emirates. I've seen other ambassadors. The Filipino ambassador, I have seen the Pakistani ambassador, I've seen the Indian ambassador. What they have is they have this kind of structures in the place. It's an official government policy in Philippines to export labor. And every mission and every ambassador in any country are assigned to report on the number of Filipinos or everybody that they have, and they follow them up, organize them, log them up, and make sure that their issues are addressed. So we need this kind of structure. It could be under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but I would prefer this to be a standalone ministry because of its importance to the country. The second thing I want to say is that the diaspora community should also organize themselves in their countries of domicile and establish formal associations and structures to channel their needs, expectations, expertise, and resources. If you are disorganized and each one of them is remitting their small money to their mother and father, I don't think that's going to have an impact. So if you are organized, thank you. If you're organized and you put yourself together and have formal structure right up back to the country, then that gives you the leverage and the power. I'm told there are nearly 2-3 million people out there, able-bodied men and women who have the capacity to vote. And I can tell you, very few presidents get away with 3 million people here. And if all of you put your votes together, you can be able to turn tables in this country. I can tell you that. The third thing I wanted to suggest is the government should come up with a dedicated diaspora commercial and industrial park where their remittance can be channeled to undertake commercial projects for them. In this way, the remittances of the diaspora will have meaning beyond subsistence bills to which they send to their families. What I can just imagine is, we know Nairobi very well, we all come from here. There is a huge piece of land right from this stadium, City Stadium, right all the way to the airport. All the colonial houses of the 20s. If land can be available, and then it's called, this is a dedicated industrial park for the diaspora, I'm told to come and send your investment. I can imagine that remittance which comes here, the 2.1 billion, will be used into good use, create jobs, create real estate opportunities, and also something for which these people can come back to as homes later. So if every county and every government city can be able to plan this kind of activity for this community, I think we give the land to others, investors, to come and do business with Kenya. Why can't we give land to our people so that they can be able to do business with us? To me, that is something which I think can be taken up with the government. The government should grant tax exemptions for anything imported and exported by the diaspora community. Believe you me, this is an incentive which is also granted to other people. Why not be extended to the diaspora community? You come here, the first people you meet here in the airport is the customs authorities. When you carry a small TV, they cut you. And the other day, they were telling me, even my mobile phone, if it's a new one, then I have to pay for it. I don't think that is the kind of thing, that the image I want to see. I want the diaspora community to be given a dedicated desk from when they come here as diplomats, and they should be given a special place where they come through and they are recognized when they come to our airports like other people. The government should also have a dedicated focal point in the country to fast-track the issuance of passports and, of course, dual citizenship for the diaspora community when they have their needs. Colleagues, on my part, I would like to start an initiative where we can create a financial transfer corridors between Kenya and high diaspora concentrated countries using the postal international financial transfer system, which has been tested and tried. We did this recently with Burundi and Belgium. Together with the International Migration Office, IOM, which deals with refugee affairs and also migrant issues, we raised funds and established 156 post offices. We equipped them with the latest technologies, and we have opened a corridor between Belgium and Burundi. Now today, they are remitting their money at less than 4% commission. And these guys are saving money. Now that I'm told that the traffic has really picked up, they told each other, and now all the Burundians in Belgium are now sending the money through that corridor. So if we have in London, in US, in other places where the Kenyans have a large concentration, United Arab Emirates or the Gulf region, we create this corridor and have a point of where they can send this. This will be, in my view, will be a practical solution. But I want to put a rider here that I have to work with the governments as well as with the postal organizations of those countries to be able to accept this to be realized. But this is an initiative which I'm going to start, and I've instructed my team to look into this before I came to this place. Well, last week we were brought together by my big brother, Mukisa, where we held a major e-commerce platform, e-commerce conference here in Kenya, global e-commerce platform by UNCTAD. And during that session, I announced the creation or a new initiative which the Universal Postal Union has launched of setting up what we call an e-commerce platform. E-commerce Africa is an African platform. Now when you shop your things, you do it on eBay's, or you do it on Alibaba's, or you do it on Amazon's and everything else. And of course, startups like Jumia's and others, but we need a single window which can be able to deliver all your goods, which can also showcase the products of Kenya to the rest of the world, and also get things from outside at an affordable price. And this, I think, will benefit greatly the diaspora community. I have had a discussion with the Kenya government. Hopefully, we are looking forward to sign an agreement by Thursday or Friday, I was told. And yesterday and the day before, I was in Addis Ababa. The Ethiopian government has moved fast, and they have signed the agreement with us. And now we're also doing with South Africa. I'm doing it with the Cote d'Ivoire. I'm doing it with Tunisia. I'm doing it with Morocco, and also with Cameroon. This e-com platform is a continental African single window platform which will be able to help all the diaspora community to be able to send their goods abroad and bring in at a really overcoming most of the challenges of e-commerce barrier. With those few remarks, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor and a pleasure for me to be here. And I have been told to invite my brother, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, who's an eloquent speaker by all means, and you all know him. Give him a big round of applause. Dr. Mukisa, please. Welcome, sir. Thank you very much.
I think all the speakers on the panel, and my old friend still wears a black cap, which my father wore in 1916 when he landed here. Same cap. I got a similar cap too, so next time I'll come with a cap. It's nice to see the number of people who are from overseas and others who are connected with the overseas people. A number of countries, you can take examples of Philippines, you can take Malaysia, Indonesia, Nigeria. You take number of countries today whose number of people has moved out of the country into some, they call it greener pastures. And because of that, we have a capacity to make sure that an impact on the amount of money that we can save and send. By the time when we talk about sending, and before sending, I think there has to be a understanding of saving. If you do not save, you cannot send. And this is the most important part. Many a times we just get into luxury of living and then forget about where we come from. I think you all have a responsibility to make very sure how to look after our country who has given you the education, where you were born, given you the education, and allowed you to freedom to move. Now, many a times it's very difficult. And the normal thing that we see today of diaspora money is sending home the money. I think the time has now changed. We're not talking about small money now. We're talking about good size money. Though we are the smallest in the list of, I think Shem produced a list in which we are very small. But small can be made bigger, provided you continue to save and find ways and means to invite others to be with you, to come over here. I think that the approach that we have from overseas is how to bring new technology, new ideas, new thoughts. And all the countries that you probably operate from or you are working from were the similar type of countries like us earlier. But it was the determination, and the determination of the word saving, making very sure that it grows with you. And those are the savings which could be then brought over here in an organized manner. Like we're talking about bonds, we're talking about infrastructure bonds, we're talking about various other possibilities that exist. And I think the people around here must also make sure to create opportunity. But you don't have the time. Many of you will come over here for a few days and go away. But there must be a contact. And there is a good possibility of a reciprocal businesses that could be set up in this country, which then could look after your interest. And I think it's necessary that we now look, because the sums are not small now. Sums are large enough to make an impact. And there are so many little things that we are taking. And with the new government approach on the 4 main jobs that we're going to do is industrialization, housing, health for all, and agriculture. I think that each one of you have a possibility to support and help. I remember some few years back I was asked to go to Kansas City and talk about Kenya. And I was very surprised that the people were prepared and eager to help. But there was no connection. And so my personal feeling is that please put your energy, which will make 1 + 1 2, but what we want is 2 + 2 multiplied by 2 as 4. Unless you can put a multiplier effect, we will not move. And multiplier effect is with you, you have the money, you have the brain, but you need a hard concentration where the money should be invested and what difference it can make to our lives. Thank you so much. It's 90 years.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manus Chandaria. Our hosts, the Association of Kenyans in the Diaspora, this eminent person sitting here, Ndugu Bishar, my friend Mutua, Mama Blue Economy. These last two that I've not named, we share a ritual. Every year, we meet at Chevy Chase, Barack Obama's golf course. It's a ritual I like to keep, that we meet in Maryland and think of our country from afar. Shem, thank you very much for the opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not in any way better than you in deciding how you're going to spend your money. So the next few moments, I'm not going to tell you where you should put your money in Kenya. But I just thought that I will share, think very loudly, my sense of the state of play in the world, in the way it impacts on judgments about investment in Kenya, and then challenges in Africa, and then end off with a few musings about our country. Globally, of course, you know that there are a number of uncertainties that have emerged, principally related to two things. One is the return of economic nationalism. That very many countries, mainstream democracies, there is a rising anger among vulnerable middle classes who have this sense that they are losing out, that globalization is transferring resources, is rewarding others more than it rewards them, and they think that erecting walls around yourselves, both physically and figuratively, returning to the sense of a national economy is a solution that will give them comfort. At another level is a global challenge coming from what some of us are calling a technology cold war. A new competition between US and China on the technology frontier, which eventually will impact the allocation of global value chains, the roots and components of manufacture that have become very important in our industrial strategies, particularly those of us in light manufacturing. Let me just say a few things about these two, and then I'll try to come closer home. You see, back in 1998, Bill Clinton announced a new global policy for the US. He called it pivoting to the East, declaring that China was now a strategic partner of the US. Basically, for the first time since the Second World War, America was describing China as a friend. And it was not because they have fallen in love with the Chinese. It's mainly because at the time America decided to draw the main lesson from the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe to be that a massive dose of capitalism is the best gravedigger of communism. That if we bring China in from the cold and allow it to join the trading community, it will start having rich people, a growing middle class, will find that they have to push the country towards capitalism, towards democracy. And then they will share part of the burden of global governance. So America was trying to bring China in, but not for altruistic reasons. That's why America was a major facilitator for China to join the World Trade Organization in 2001. 20 years later, what has happened? The strategic partner started being described a few years ago as a rival, as a competitor. And in 2018, the Vice President of the United States declared China an adversary, an enemy of the US. Why? Because the experiment to grow capitalism in China through bringing it from the cold has been miraculously successful. But capitalism grew, the Communist Party became stronger. So part of the equation has worked. But the worst part, which you thought would disappear because of success on the capitalist side, has not worked as expected. So you get to a point where opening up globally, which was driven by America, is demonstrating that China can play the American game better than America. And a fear that China will overtake America technologically starts America, first of all, in tightening Chinese access to American technology. You might mistake some noises like America all of one sudden does not want international trade. No, America is dependent on international trade. But the reality is a cold where you are fearing, unless something is done, the rising sun of the East is going to overrun us. Why is this something I'm starting off with when I'm talking to you? America is imposing tariffs on Chinese merchandise to slow down Chinese benefit from American market. So far, it has been on technology enterprise like GTZ and Huawei and stopping Chinese innovators from accessing American technology. But maybe it's a bit too late in the day. I've just been at an international conference in Shenzhen, which is the home of the Chinese dream. If you go to Shenzhen, their motto is very much the origin of what is called China Strategy 2025. 20 years ago, we wanted to be the manufacturers of the world, make for them. We have succeeded. Today, we want to be creators of the world. We don't want to innovate, buy somebody's technology. We want China to create the technology. And that's the goal of Agenda 2025. So America Great Again is an American industrial policy to contain, to rein in a resurgent China. We as an African continent, our main export other than traditional agricultural produce is the set of things we sell under AGOA to America. Textiles, handcrafts, Southern Africa, cars, others, petroleum. But if you look at what we have been selling under the AGOA from this country for the past 20 years, you find some. We import canvas from China, we cut it, stitch it, rules of origin to say reduce how much component must be imported from other countries. So we remained comfortable at 35% benchmark at our input. If we had been forced at the time, we'll be growing cotton, automating textile making. Textile jobs are coming back to Georgia, where they had gone out because of the cost of labor. Robots can now do the work that labor was to do. But the second and importantly, at first it may be direct hit on China, but I can see America opening up existing agreements to say China cannot come into our domestic market through the back door. If you are going to export anything under preferential access to American market, you must have at least migration. In spite of all the xenophobic propaganda around the world, the largest number of Africans migrate to Africa. Yes? The largest number of Africans, we must start also identifying social issues of attention for the migrants. But there's also another thing that came through. When you think about Africa, I'm sorry, here I digress from the common preferred knowledge around this continent. New Africans are getting into the labor market. Where do we find the capacity to guarantee a generation? They have very limited investment in democracy. Challenges than the previous generation. It must worry us. However well we invest in a country because of the promise of hope, if we cannot create livelihoods for the young men and women who are coming out of colleges, event where governments have started to pay attention, people purchase from them without going through meets. And I can tell you this, I have not discriminated in favor of Kenyans. The recruiting team has 2 people from my organization and 5 people from Alibaba. And all the applications are done online. Luckily, unluckily for some countries, when the government advertisement, they send the names of civil servants in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But this space is happening. The last week, as mentioned earlier by my brother Bishar, I hosted the first e-commerce week for Africa in Gigiri. And if you just see the phenomenon that's happening, you'll say to yourself, step back. We have had the narrative, one line of investment. It's not a bad line of investment. But entrepreneurs can never invest in the same time every year, all of them. Then they stop being entrepreneurs. I'm like villagers, when you also open a stall next to them and sell tea leaves. to me, to be risk takers, and I've challenged the Kenyan business community, and I spoke to the they call it the 40 club, the billionaires or at age 40 club. I said, look at the average rich Kenyan businessman. Many of them inherited or bought into enterprise, for example, importing semi-processed Malaysian cooking fat, palm oil, finishing it off to make detergents or cooking fats. This was done by the grandfathers. It was brought here because the Second World War Germans stopped the supply of those things from Europe, so they were intercepted to satisfy the colonial middle class by making it locally. We want the next level of entrepreneurs to say, what is the space of delusions? There is no honor in being a giant among dwarfs. You are in a situation where your traditional comforts are being shocked. Until Magufuli came along, global private capital was more excited about Tanzania and Kenya. It is slowing down. For many of us, what are you saying? We are seeing a country translate quantitative expansion into qualitative transformation. Ethiopia is on the brink of liberalized telecoms and financial markets. But it's doing that when it has built capacity to be locally competitive in the region. You have just completed building a road that can take a Ferrari from Nairobi to Addis Ababa. That road, how much are we prepared for merchandise to be heading north? If we're not, it will be a route for merchandise to head south. The challenge that is before us is not how much profit I can make personally, but how can we have a conversation when government realizes responsibilities of a historical moment, that we're in a moment where we make it, all the gains and pretensions of being ahead of others will be reversed in a very disastrous way. We're at a moment where it is very difficult. The conversation politically is not adequately addressing this. We constructed a constitutional architecture that is too expensive for our size of economy. The thousands of MCS, the MPs who can take whatever amount of money they want. I live in the city of Geneva, where all the time I have Kenyan MPs and senators present. An MP from the Kenya Party, this is no way to run a village. The reality is, we have erected a monster. We must borrow money internationally to pay debts of consumption, to pay recurrent expenditure. But the discourse in politics is hand over more money to the devolved units. I come from Western Kenya. If you go today, they are entertaining guests in a neighboring country. Those investments are taxpayer money. I told you this is a narrative I will not give before, known as other than Kenyan. You are some of our best. You must take some responsibility, share the burden of how we are going to correct this. But no, as a country, we only care about one ritual, a ritual of democracy. At every 5 years, we all don our traditional native garb and head to the mountains for a bout of idolatry, worshipping idols in the name of tribal promise. That time we don't talk about an agenda, we don't talk about stability, we don't talk about the future of our children and their education. When we come back from the mountain, always limping with self-inflicted wounds, exhausted, we start saying, what have we done? And the next 4.5 years is a narrative of self-immolation and figure pointing. When we recover from it, we're preparing, ready for the next round. This country cannot afford the complacency of thinking that democracy is an end for it. We took on democracy as a means. We need a narrative. We need a narrative that puts the next generation at the core of what to do. We need a narrative that says foreign investment. If you are going to invest, for example, in an infrastructure project in Kenya, to make it attractive to you, we will team up with the government of Kenya to give investment insurance. And some of our money goes into easing the burden for you in that investment. When you buy market access on the retail market, you always pay a high price, just like anything. If you buy on the wholesale market, you always get the best deal. As a diaspora group, you have the capacity to demand of Kenya government that since we are the main source of foreign investment in Kenya, we want the government and its development partners to de-risk our investment in Kenya. They can't afford not to attract you to bring your money. But you have to play on the basis of your strength by knowing what you are asking for. If you just want to ask for ensuring that the land you want to buy and build on is not being sold by a crook, they can give you that assistance, but that is not important to this country. That's important to you. That's important to your ego. That's important for a family, that you have a place which will make you come back and bury them here. But that is not creating the next million jobs that this country needs urgently to create. Sorry, I didn't mean to be preaching. I just meant to say we are at a difficult time. The traditional economy is basically on its deathbed. And new dynamics are informing international action. You are some of our best. Let the directions of your investment and your demands for security be in the direction of investing in sustainability, in the new areas that breathe life and hope in the young, underemployed, existentially challenged men and women of this country. Thank you for your kind attention.
Obviously, I was tempted to apologize, but in these circumstances, should we apologize or compliment? How many say we should compliment? Daktari, I have no words. By the way, the team you see at the front here, we have what we call the KDA platform for those who are interested in matters of diaspora. We have the VIP where we have 15 ambassadors, and we have just the 5 top people here, the VVIPs. And I'm glad today they are all here. Give them a round of applause as we walk out. As we said, this was Kionjo, so the rest is to follow later. So we'll allow them to pass. Can we remain seated as they, or you can stand as they pass if you wish, or you sit. And then we can follow them. They'll go through the other door. They'll go through the other door. Balozi Mwencha, can you go through with the other side? Yeah, where Mzee Chandaria. Please allow them just to find a walk. Mheshimiwa Abdi, please, please, please. You are the chief of protocol. Thank you. Then we'll follow quickly. Then we take a group photo. We have tea. Then we come and start proper. Thank you so much for bearing with us. Na karibuni. I hand you over to the bar.
Thank you very much for being amazingly patient. I know we are really strapped of time right now. We're really pressing for time even as we are going for our tea break. We will not take the whole 15 minutes that we have on the program. I will request that we cut it to 10 minutes, so it will be a 10-minute break. And we want also to double this now with the exhibitions as well, so that now we can actually also take advantage of that handy opportunity that we have right now to go to the exhibitors and to see what they're showcasing this morning as well. So you can also take that opportunity as well. So enjoy your tea, and after 10 minutes, please, let's just be here. We continue with the program. We have a lot to cover, and at least we've also cut a chunk of that from our presenters here, and the presentation also that we had from our philanthropist, Manu Chandari as well. So please, do enjoy your tea. Also remember, as we said, this is a moment for you to network as well. So if you have your cards, this is a good opportunity for you to also make sure you spread yourself around and exchange cards as well, and take a good sum of contacts as well that will help you move forward as well. So if there's a missing lapel mic here that was on the podium, if you have it somewhere, please just hand it over to the media persons.